I think a lot of people believe you can't have intimacy without some kind of drug or alcohol because they're so used to it being the lubrication that makes the conversations work, that makes the easy questions or the difficult questions easy, and that you can give yourself permission to do things you might not do otherwise. So why do you think it's such an unspoken challenge for so many people, this thing called social intimacy?
When you spend so much of your life, if not all of it, hiding behind substances to get out of socially awkward situations. When you remove the drink and the drug, I had no idea how to act, how to respond, how to really do much of anything. And so I had to completely train my brain, and as if this was day one, on, okay, well, I don't have those things anymore. This whole concept of getting in closer to the very thing that you've been pushing up against and drinking at or drugging at for so long is so foreign when we enter sobriety. So this whole, anxiety, this just general anxiousness that we get is really, we just don't have a reference point. Probably the majority of people in sobriety, they've taken such a big block out of their life, going to happy hour, having to quote unquote drink to be happy, that they don't really know how to be happy, in any other way other than what they're used to.
Welcome to the Brain Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Porter. Please join us on our mission to better a billion brains. Enjoy the episode and remember to share it with your family and friends.
Hey, this is Dr. Patrick Porter. Welcome back to the Brain Fitness Podcast. Today we have a very special podcast, something that's near and dear to my heart, seeing that you all have heard my story, that my father was a chronic alcoholic. We spent our life going to Alateen meetings, AA meetings, just figuring out how to help dad out. And he got help, thank God. So out of the 9 kids, nobody has an addiction problem. So we've got that one hopefully solved at least one day at a time. We're doing what we need to do. But then I ran into you, MJ. You have a whole community of people, and you've built these communities around sobriety and healing. So when we got together, we talked a little bit about brain health, but tell me about how brain health showed up to you and your mission. Tell us a little bit about the mission of Loosid and why this partnership, I think, is going to be so compelling for people.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Dr. Porter. I mean, it's all about, so I always talk about when we get it. So I entered recovery, for God willing, the last time, March 21st, 2012. And, my drugs of choice, whatever they were, they happen to be alcohol, cocaine, whatever it may be. But my problem was never alcohol, and it was never cocaine. It was never pills. My problem was me and my broken brain, right? And so when we get sober, and I'll use myself as an example, I started drinking at 14 and then layering other substances. When I got sober at 41, I'm 54 now, I really didn't know how to approach life. And I had this kind of brain of a 14-year-old because I had always used alcohol and substances just to escape life. And so this is why I think it's going to be such an exciting time for you and I to explore really the mental health and brain science and brain fitness, because as people get sober for the first time, we're really living life the first time, and we need help and guidance.
Yeah, I know. When a lot of things, they tell people to just do these steps, but they need to do something daily, right? They need to have some kind of practice daily that they do to keep themselves basically in tune with what they want to be that day, instead of letting the past creep up on them or letting the stresses of life. But tell us from your perspective, what do you think is the biggest mental hurdle people face in recovery? What do you think the biggest number one thing is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they want everything back on day one. Everything that they lost, they want back on day one, and they complain that they don't have it on day 2. And so we spend our lives burning towns and villages, but we want it all back, within that first day. And we want everything back. We want all our relationships back. We want everybody to forgive us. We want all of our finances back. And that's just not the reality in 99.9% of the cases. And so these incredible tools that you and I are always discussing, that really is the science behind the brain and mental health, is kind of moving people into, first, that whole concept of acceptance. Okay, I get it. I've been drinking and drugging from the time I was 14 to 41. Got it. Not going to get everything back in day one. Got it. And just starting with something so powerful, which I was learning from you a year and a half before I ever met you, just the power of breath and being able to calm that. I think they call it the monkey mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so many people don't realize that when you take a substance out of the body and the body's interacting with it, we now know it has a lot of different features, from psychological features to epigenetic features that change the body, how it responds to things. The body is still reaching out for those connections that it had with alcohol or whatever the drug of choice is. And when that connection's not made, there's a feeling of loss and remorse. So we've talked about technologies, like you showed BrainTap before we got started here. Of course, we put our app together on BrainTap. You helped me with the content so that we could make sure it fits in with the Loosid mission and what they're doing. But how do you see these transformative emotional and cognitive skills helping in recovery? I mean, from your perspective. I mean, I know where I would. I had my 2 cents in when you're done, but go ahead.
You know, it's so fascinating. So when you and I discussed doing this series, and you asked me to shoot over some stuff that I think it was very relevant for the recovery community, and then you came back with the script, and you said, "Let me know what you think." I was blown away, because I was thinking that I was going to red ink the entire thing. And I was like, my God, you understand how like this thing works. And it's like, it's not, it's interesting. I happen to be a 12-step guy, right? And people they have different feelings on 12 steps, AA, whatever it may be. But the principles of what's been getting people balanced with regard to recovery and mental health has been, helping people way before 12-step programs. Like the principles of connection, acceptance, forgiveness, making amends, like all these type of things have been going on for hundreds and hundreds, if not probably thousands of years prior to these programs that have really come to the forefront since, specifically 12 steps, since 1935. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people don't realize the role connection plays, not just with other people, but with things, events. Like we have triggers. Some people call them triggers. They have different events. They can't go to a ball game. They can't go over to a friend's house. They can't play pool or whatever they're doing because the association is so strong. So we talk a lot about connection during the series that we did, the Rewire series, so we can help people rewire their brain. And you talk about it being a real meaningful connection. And so why is this so vital for staying sober?
Yeah, well, so the opposite of addiction is connection. I am 100% believer in that. And what you see and what you find every day on Loosid is people joining Loosid and saying, nobody's going to understand this, but I can't, I'm drinking, but I can't stop, and I can't stay stopped, and nobody's going to understand, and I just feel all alone, because it's a disease of isolation, right? And then suddenly everybody jumps in, and though our experiences are different, the feeling of disconnection and isolation are the same. And so suddenly Loosid members say, we get it, and they start sharing their experiences, and that person is like, oh my God, I am home. And so there's this saying, those amongst us, no explanation is necessary. Those not amongst us, no explanation is possible. When you get within an affinity group of people who share a common bond, magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize we talked a lot about gratitude when we did these sessions and
Mm-hmm.
taking account of your day, because there's so many good things that happen every day. I mean, we look at the news, they have to scour the whole planet to give us 1 hour of bad news, right? And
Yeah.
so if you want to be depressed, just turn on one of the network channels for news time, because they
Yeah.
looking all over to find you such bad news. But in our own life, there's things that we can focus on and really celebrate every day through gratitude. And it's a part of this personal mental fitness program we're talking about, and it's part of your leadership approach. So tell us, how did that come to be for you? Because that's not really one of the, I mean, there's a one day at a time, enjoying yourself, knowing that everything's possible, but gratitude is now, I think for the last 10 years has really come to the forefront, because people realize that these words hold power and they drive emotion in our body, and that emotion drives behavior. So tell us a little bit about how you think it plays in the mental fitness world.
Well, I mean, and it happens to be the number one. Well, it's the most popular section of Lucid. It's about the two wolves. It's about which, they say, which wolf will you feed? It's like there's the fear and there's the faith, there's the positive, there's the negative, there's the. I don't know where I heard this, but nothing that I say is original material, but it's why me versus why me. So we could say, why me? Like, why me? Why did I have to be an alcoholic? Like, why? Or why me? Why was I able to get this gift when so many other people haven't been able to get this gift? Or why was I able to um, have a disease that's 100% treatable when there's so many, not curable, just to be clear, treatable one day at a time, contingent on doing certain things each day? Why did I get so lucky to have a treatable, 100% treatable disease that I could put that disease into remission every day of my life? How did I get so lucky? Compared to why me? How did I get the disease of alcoholism? Like, so it all depends upon where you shift your focus. And so when I'm working with someone and they're talking about some really, negative stuff, and I tell them, tell me 5 things you're grateful for. Well, I don't have any. Okay. Okay. Got it. Clothes on your back. Oh, okay. Yep. Food in your stomach. Uh, uh, Yes. You slept on the street last night? Well, yes, roof over my head. And then before you know it, they're like, sugar, you just took me out of my bad state. And so when we think of even the most basic levels that we never really are grateful for until we realize, what did they say? I was, what did they say? I forget what the expression was, but I felt uh, I I didn't like my shoes until I saw the man with no feet, right? So in other words, we're always looking at the grass always being greener. And it says the billionaire is looking for something that he or she doesn't have. And then the millionaire, and it goes all the way down the line. Everybody wants everything. Nobody's happy unless we get into that position of gratitude. And I think that that's really what it's all about, is really focusing on what is around us that we oftentimes don't even realize exists.
Right. Yeah, my first book that I wrote, Awaken the Genius, I have a chapter, how I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic. And I can't tell you how many times I'm on a radio or TV show, they said, why did you say that in your book? I said, well, does it serve me to say, poor me? My dad was an alcoholic. I should be. My dad went through the suffering. I could either, he did, go out and drink, do all those things. I choose not to drink. And somebody once told me, well, you're probably an alcoholic. I said, well, probably, but I don't need to test it, because I know no one can drink. I mean, some people are out there saying I can drink, but the reality is they could take Formula One drivers, give them a couple drinks, and they don't perform at their highest level. So when you're talking about a lot of people out there, even for the sake of, they don't really have a problem today, but it could lead to a problem, they're stopping because there's no health benefit. There's no real benefit to this. other
Yeah.
than the emotional or psychological benefit. So one of the things we talk about a lot, and I know that we're going to be talking later about the dating app, and you have a dating app for that, but there's something called sober intimacy. And I think a lot of people believe you can't have intimacy without some kind of drug or alcohol because they're so used to it being the lubrication that makes the conversations work, that makes the easy questions or the difficult questions easy, and that you can give yourself permission to do things you might not do otherwise. So why do you think it's such an unspoken challenge for so many people, this thing called social intimacy?
Well, I mean, I think that when you spend so much of your life, if not all of it, hiding behind substances to get out of socially awkward situations. When you remove the drink and the drug, and especially just using me as a perfect example, I had no idea how to act, how to respond, how to really do much of anything. And so I had to completely train my brain, and as if this was day one, on, okay, well, I don't have those things anymore. And one of my friends who is spiritual, very spiritual guy, and I would get all in fear, and he would say, "Oh, that's beautiful. Get closer to the pain." And I'd be like, "Closer? What are you crazy?" And he's like, "Oh, give it a name." I'm like, "Give it a name?" He's like, "Yeah, give." And then he'd send me like a meditation by Tara Brach or Sharon Salzberg, and like these meditation teachers that he would always work with, and this whole concept of getting in closer to the very thing that you've been pushing up against and drinking at or drugging at for so long is so foreign when we enter sobriety. So this whole, anxiety, this just general anxiousness that we get is really, we just don't have a reference point. Listen, I started drinking when I was 14. I didn't really have any relationships when I was 13 years old. So I really had to kind of learn this for the first time. And it's just very much the case for a lot of people, probably the majority of people in sobriety. They've taken such a big block out of their life, going to happy hour, having to quote unquote drink to be happy, that they don't really know how to be happy, in any other way other than what they're used to.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important, like what we put together on the visualization part of it. People don't realize that the brain or the subconscious doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So you get what you rehearse, not what you intend. So if you don't rehearsing those new behaviors, you can have the greatest intentions in the world, but if you let life happen to you instead of through you, you're going to have big problems. I always tell people, could you imagine watching your favorite movie with the actors and actresses never rehearsed? But people, they stop drinking or they stop doing their addiction and they never rehearse what they're going to do. They just think, I'm going to show up and something's going to change. Nothing changes until you change. So the nice
I
thing
love how
about,
you say through you. I love how you say through you. Because one of my favorite books is The Untethered Soul.
yes,
And it talks about blockages, trauma blockages. And unless you let them pass through you, and we don't realize we have them. We've been collecting them since we were born. And until we can let those traumas go, then and one of the things that I find most fascinating every time that I take a brain tap session, and Dr. Porter didn't cue me up for this. I'm a very strong believer in this, right? Is there so when I'm taking a brain tap session, and I asked you about this one day. So at first, so I was listening to this audio on brain tap, right? And then the person was talking beyond the person talking. And I thought it was a mistake. Oh, something's the matter with this machine, right?
right.
But then I noticed that when I was done with the sessions, I was so deeply affected by them. And then when you and I were having a conversation about it, you said, well, so when you're listening normally, you have this extra whatever 40% where you're listening to all this other junk. And that background talking behind the talking doesn't allow you to focus on that other junk. And so it's reinforcing the primary. And I found that fascinating because there's real science behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have first and second attention. That's why if you go into like a dental office or office environment, they'll be playing relaxing music to get your mind off of things. But
Yeah.
but if somebody has talk on, people can zone that out. They don't even hear it. They don't remember it at all. So your attention's going somewhere.
Yeah.
So your focus and attention is what's going to guide your behaviors and attitudes and beliefs. So and it's going to everyone right now watching this is predicting their future. They're just either letting it happen by default or they're actually planning it. Now, the nice thing is, and we talk about this power that's greater than both of us. There's a power inside of you right now that's beating your heart 86,000 times a day. There's a power that's keeping you breathing over 21,000 times a day, changing your cells 50,000. I could keep going on. We could spend a whole 2 days. This is all happening without you. So it's not you. It's a power greater than you. That's the force, if you will. That's the power that you need to tune into. Now, if you want to make it religious or spiritual, that's fine too. But the reality is that you have the power one day at a time to choose. But like you said, if you don't, it's kind of like the Dune movie where they talk about the proclamation against fear. You have to face the fear, let the fear pass through you. Don't let it be absorbed by you. It's just thoughts. A lot of people think just because they think it's got to be real, but you have a lot of thoughts you never act on. Somebody might pull over in traffic and you get scared. You might think you're going to do something, but you realize I'm not going to destroy my car in this case. I'm not going to do it. So when we start thinking about our consequences to our actions and we plan those, and the nice thing is that if the brain only has one choice, like an addiction, if we only have one choice for an infinite amount of problems, we have a real problem with our thinking, because at that moment, our brain is a 100 billion neurobit processor. It's always thinking of options, opportunities. But the addictive mind thinks, oh no, if all these series of things happens, it means I must drink. No, these are series of things that happen. What is something else? And if we can make drinking number 2, you'll never make that choice, because we've always made the number one best choice. But the problem is, like in a computer tree, when we're going through a computer program, it says, go to this page, and these are your 2 choices, 3 choices. But if there's only one choice to go, we don't want to go there. We're going to get frustrated. We're going to get anxious. Like you said, there's a saying that I love. It's all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. So when you are even though there's been millions and millions of people that have gotten sober through different means, and whatever way they did was great. I always tell people, whatever works is good for you. So you've got to find what works for you. And when you think about, when we get back to Brain Tap, we created this series. They can listen to it anytime they want. I put a suggestion on the end of it. If they're listening in bed, they can listen. It'll put them to sleep. They can listen in the afternoon. They can listen in the morning. But I want to let the listeners know there's 3 reasons why we have different times of the day we might want to do some kind of brain fitness. And so especially when you start to retrain the brain, because if you were drinking before or doing some kind of drug, you probably disrupted your sleep. And sleep is when we incubate our superpowers. And what we're talking about here, every superhero had to go to the dark night of the soul, every one of them. So if you're going through it right now, you're going through your dark night of the soul. If you can emerge on the other end, you're going to have a superpower. Like you said, you can put this in remission every day, one day at a time. That's a superpower. And you can help other people to do that. That's a superpower. Now,
it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I always when I work with people, as an avocation, I always tell them that you're going to have, when you're done with this, you're going to have a tremendous superpower, because when you're done with it, you're not going to have the ability to be, so you look at the HOW, honest. You have to be honest. You have to be open. You have to be willing. You can't lie. You got to clean up your side of the street. If someone pisses you off, you got to pray for them. You are going to have a freaking superpower, because everybody else in the world is snipping at one another, yapping at them. And here we are. If we're following these principles, we're accepting, we're forgiving, and we take hate and turn it into love. Like, if that's not a superpower, I don't know what is. What isn't?
Yeah, I always told my kids growing up, and this is something I learned from my dad, that these triggers, think of them like you're giving somebody your remote control. So I always told my kids, I said, he who angers you conquers you. Because in martial arts, they know if you could get somebody off balance, making them angry, they can't think straight. Their brain we're not wired to think when we're angry. We're wired to fight or flee. And sometimes those aren't the two best choices. Sometimes communication is the best choice. Sometimes accepting is the right choice. Sometimes just letting it happen. But if we don't hardwire that in. So when you think about mental skills, and I know you have a lot of skills and a lot of group processes you do on Loosid, and we put a lot of those into the app. But what do you think helped you the most in these high pressure moments? Because a lot of people think, oh, I can make it through these small little things. But and Mike Tyson, I think, said it best, everyone has a plan till they get hit.
Yeah.
So we need to plan. Not everything is going to go our way. We don't have
Correct.
cheerleaders waiting for us in the morning that see us off to work and cheer us down the road and pat us on the back. A lot of times all our successes go unseen, and sometimes it seems like all our failures are spotlighted to our community. So
Yeah.
what do you think is the best mental skills and practices that have helped you along the way?
Well, I mean, I think that the power of the pause, the power of inaction is potentially and oftentimes the most powerful thing that we can ever do. I mean, obviously, inaction could mean not taking a drink. Inaction can mean restraint of pen and tongue, right? Which can just be absolutely devastating. And so being able to take a breath and not react and to actually let that pause happen is oftentimes the difference between, staying in a program and relapse, that power of non-reaction. So I think that is something that's incredibly important. I think also what you mentioned about comparison, they say comparison is the death of happiness. And so if you were to live your life by what other people think of me as none of my spiritual business, then no matter what happens, one of my favorite books is the most simple book on the planet called The Four Agreements. And there's 2 chapters in there, 2 of the 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally and don't make assumptions. And if you can master those, I don't think anybody in the history of the world ever has, because it says right there in the book that nobody's really ever going to go 30 days without being able to take anything personally or making assumptions. But the closer you can get to understanding that when people mistreat you, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with some challenges that they're going through. That shift in perception and understanding is something that can save your life. So I think that it's all about educating your brain, educating yourself on what you know, and also understanding that you have to accept what you don't know. I think that's probably the most powerful.
Yeah. And I think during our sessions that we recorded that they can listen to on the Loosid app that has the bundles on it, that we talk about rehearsing that. We call it a pattern interrupt in psychology. Mm-hmm. So we all have patterns. And once we know those patterns, shame on us for letting people press those buttons. Don't give away your remote control to somebody else. If you know they're going to press the button, then you've got to take the batteries out of the remote control. Don't hand it over to them fully charged and let them control you. But the thing is that you have to do this in real time. So we have to teach them these mental techniques. Like the one session I did where I have them use a stop sign, for instance. Stop giving it energy, stop giving it life, give it time in your mind. Now think of 3 different things you do there. That's the pause. So what are you going to do during the pause? What are 3 options? And what I love is what I learned early on in my career working with addictions when I worked for the Arizona Health Council was a lot of people think the craziest thoughts are not good, but you can have a crazy thought, but you also have to have some sane thoughts along with it. But when you have that, let's say, and I always say, think of something funny, silly that you'd never really do, but is humorous, because the brain, in order to create that scenario, has to create the infinite number of ones between what's really stable for you and that crazy one. Even though you didn't recognize it. remember, we have this 100 billion neurobit processor. The human brain is more powerful than all computer systems on Earth, more powerful than AI. And we program it through our lives, just through our life, just by letting it happen. But now you get a chance at any age. There's no age you can't improve your brain function, to start interrupting those patterns. So once you know those patterns, it's not a death sentence. You get to use those superpowers we were talking about. Now you have something to work on. And now you have something to also to celebrate. Like you said, hey, maybe that person that would always piss you off, you get to walk away with a smile and just let them have their own stuff. You know, if they want to put poop on your porch, let them take the bag with them.
Well, they say it's not your garbage to pick up. I always tell friends that it's not your garbage to pick up. Like the story is of the wise old. This guy comes into this town and it's pissing everybody off, and they say, "I bet you can't piss off the wise old sage on the top of the mountain." He's like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And he goes up to the mountain and he sees the wise old sage and just spends weeks, just doing everything he can to piss off the wise old sage. And the wise old sage is just sitting there smiling. And so finally he's like, "I don't get it. I've done this to you. I've done that to you. I had this, and I said this. What? But you're sitting there smiling. What? And he's like, "Let me ask you a question. If I gave," the wise old sage says, "if I gave you a gift and you chose not to accept it, who does the gift belong to?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you've tried to give me all this stuff over the last 2 weeks, but I've just had no interest in taking what you're giving me. So where does all that, that anger and all that negativity belong to?" It belongs to you. It has nothing to do with me. I chose not to accept the gift. So if we look at it that way, it's so simple, but I fall into the same, trap time and time again. But I will tell the community a huge hack that Dr. Porter has in a couple of his series. It's like an 8-minute breath work that I always go back to, which is like this rapid Wim Hof, I think it's Wim Hof, breath work that is like, it is absolutely intoxicating. That release, I do it when I can, morning, noon, and night, and it is one of the most powerful shape-shifting things that ever happens in my life when I do it.
Yeah, I think most people don't realize your physiology is linked to your psychology. So if you're locked, think about depression, anxiety, fear. All these negative emotions have one thing in common: lack of breath. You can't be angry and breathe. You can't be upset and breathe. If you ever had a little kid come up and they're all angry and you say, "Breathe, breathe," they won't, because they know as soon as they start breathing, they don't have the anger anymore, because people want to own it. But as soon as you learn to breathe, the breath releases it from the nervous system. And what it's doing on a physiological basis, for those listening, we have this sympathetic and parasympathetic drive. And when we get stuck in this sympathetic drive, that's the fight or flight, the fear response, then all our thinking derives from that, let's say, that filter. But if we can get into relax, digest, and recovery, that's where we get into that pause mode. We get into openness. We get into choices. Because even a caged animal, we were in Canada a few years back. It's been over 20 years now, when my kids were younger. And there was a bear in the middle of the road with their cubs. And so everyone's parked to see them. And I'm thinking of that show, Faces of Death, because this idiot gets out of his car with his camera, starts walking toward Mama Bear. Well, the bear got up on his haunches, and of course he ran back to the car. And then, of course, when he ran back to the car, everybody was safe. But the bear sat down again. They started playing. You can't threat. We all have that part of ourselves. Now, the further we get away from that, that one day at a time approach, and we started having more of a long view thinking. And I always told my people is, live your life like today's your last. What would you say to somebody? What would you do? How would you live your life? In the best way possible, to show up as your best self. But plan your life like you're going to live forever. Because the addictive mind is immediate gratification, no thought of long-term implications or results, who you're going to hurt. But the main person they're hurting is themselves. Because when you hurt those relationships, you hurt, like you said, financially. So as we start to look at these things with what we're doing, and we've talked about a lot of different mental wellness tools. But what do you think excites you the most, MJ? What do you think in the Loosid community, besides BrainTap? I know we're going to be launching BrainTap. We're going to be doing a lot with the network. But what other things do you see are working? Because I think people are embracing now more technology to realize they can check their sleep scores, they can check their sugar levels even, because they might not even know that maybe their sugar level's dropping, and that's causing these things to happen. There's a lot of reasons, if they start doing some health optimization using some of the biohacks that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I speak at a lot of conferences. Almost every month I'll speak at a conference, and they always say what scares you and excites you the most. And I always say it's the same thing. What scares me is the power of digital, the power that digital has to absolutely destroy. And what excites me is the power that digital has to absolutely heal, right? It all depends upon where you direct it and whose hands you put it in. And so when we talk about Loosid's new AI, and I was skeptical about AI until we started working with the machine learning team, and I was absolutely astounded at the power of machine learning and AI. The thing that excites me so much is that when I'm trying to help someone, I can only help that one person or maybe 20 people or 200 people in a room. So when we created Loosid, we said, well, wait a second. If there's 300 million people suffering from alcohol use disorder worldwide, and 38% of adult Americans are suffering from some illicit substance use, we are absolutely screwed if we don't come up with a way to help that at scale. And that's why we created Loosid. So let's create something where we could bring all those people, in aggregate over 500 million people, together in one place through the power of connection. And that's what excites me the most, to allow people always say, well, what doctors are part of Loosid? And I'm like, well, so if you think of, we'll go back to 12 steps, the whole 12-step reason why 12-step groups happen is because the doctors, the most powerful doctor in the world, Carl Jung, said, there is nothing I can do. There's this group, though, that's helping create these enlightened experiences in America. Check them out. And all they do is connect with one another, and some sort of magic happens, right? And so I always laugh when I'll go to do press and they'll say, can you bring a doctor? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I mean, I love Dr. Porter, and I'm not saying anything against doctors, but I am saying the validation of one addict's ability to help another is undeniable. And the moment you try to interject anything in between, and this is why I love talking to you, because you're coming from both lenses. You're coming from the standpoint of science, but truly understanding the power of connection. And the fact that one addict helping another is one of the most powerful things that have ever happened, right? And so having the experience of you going through what you went through with your father, and understanding that we could take science together with that power of connection and allow people to heal on a much greater level is just amazing.
Yeah, and I think people don't understand the value of when somebody's walked that path. That used to be we learned all of our professions, right? We would go get a mentor. They would teach us to become a carpenter or a plumber or whatever. We would maybe have 5 years with them, but we've kind of lost that in our culture. We don't have that. So we need a mentor. Somebody's already walked that path, and it means something. When you go, a lot of times you go to the professional and they want to be too perfect.
Yeah.
And there's nobody that's that perfect, but they want to at least have that appearance. I know a lot of doctors. I'm a PhD, but I know a lot of MDs that are kind of some of the sickest people I know. And because they're in the sick care industry, they're not in the healthcare industry. So, but there are a lot of doctors that are in the healthcare industry. So we're going to be wrapping up the call here, but I want to let people know that
by the way, I was trying to find a picture for you. Because when people ask, here's a picture I wanted to share with you. What qualifies you to help my son? I said, well, here it is right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, that was my last trip to the intensive care unit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it. I understand the power of complete and utter hopelessness. That's how I can help. Yeah. And so, so when you think about the kind of the 1-2 punch of Loosid and Brain Tap, it's, if we have back to why I'm so excited about what we're doing together is when you're able to back science up with principles of recovery, it just puts it on a whole nother level. And so there's that level of validation that although you don't need some people need to understand how the brain works. And when you and I were also talking about how you could get like the same kind of chemicals to release, through different things that the Brain Tap visualizations does that are the same kind of whatever it may be, oxytocin or whatever the chemicals are that when we were using drugs. And if we could emulate that, then that means we don't need to use drugs in order to get into those same beautiful states of mind that used to take substances to get us to that point.
Yeah, we're now finding that the neurotransmitters, and that's what I was saying about the physiology. If you're stuck in fight or flight or stress mode, you're only making those neurochemicals that cause your body to feel anxious, upset, and fearful. You're basically poisoning yourself. That's why they say the person with the negative thoughts is poisoning themselves. Just let them do it. They don't realize that you can change the channel, like through breath work, through movement, through different things. And what I was going to say is that there'll be links below with the Loosid connection, so you can try out the app. We have a free trial on the app of 14 days, so you can try it. If you don't like it, just stop within the 14th day. You will not be charged. But then if you want to supercharge that app, we have a lot of science on there that talks about the light, the sound, and the vibration, which we might go into a little bit deeper at another time once the Loosid community gets more involved with it. But the reason we're doing this is something called neuroplasticity. So the listener, what happens is when we get a fixed state, like when a lot of addicts will have this mindset. They do the same thing every day. When they get out of that pattern, they become unhappy because they're used to this certain pattern. Like, I knew people that they wouldn't get up unless there was a joint on their alarm clock with a little bit of speed. So they knew that if they got up, they got those. That was their reward. Well, that's not a really good reward after a while, right? It's gonna cause problems. So
right.
We have to come up with a different reward system. So there's 11 different sessions, and each one of them is going to train the brain, like MJ was saying, to get you into different brainwave states to trigger different neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters, by the way, are not made in the brain. 95% of them are made in the gut. That's where your emotions are. You have a gut brain. So we have to balance this gut-brain connection. And that's one of the biggest things that happens with addiction is the body's trying to heal and get back to some kind of homeostasis or balance. And the mind, when they say the mind's willing, but the flesh is weak, they have that saying. The reason is that the mind can change with a thought, but the body is going to take days, weeks, and months to really detox, recover, retrain the neurology. And one of the examples I give people is, if you think about it, MJ, when you go to open a door with a door handle, do you know which way the doorknob turns?
No.
Okay, so you do it every day though, right? If you see one, they always turn toward the hinges, right? You just did it with your hand. That's what I wanted you to do. It's hardwired into your physiology.
Huh. Yeah.
Because you do it so often, you don't have to think about it. But all doors open toward their hinges. So I didn't even realize that, but a number of years ago when I was putting in a house, I bought the wrong doorknob. And he said, well, you told me it was a left-hand door. So, we do this every day, but we don't think about it, because it's hardwired into our nervous system. So this is why we need plasticity and that change to happen. So as we wrap this up today, we've had a great talk. Hopefully people understand, and we'll go check out Loosid if they're not a Loosid member already and they're part of the Brain Tap community, because we have a lot of people using Brain Tap for addiction. I think it'd be great for them to join your community and get more support.
Absolutely.
What could you leave the audience, and I haven't asked you about, or you want to reinforce about the reset message today that we were talking about?
First of all, if you have the opportunity to get the actual device, there's something very magical that happens with whatever the science is, that the light that comes in through the ear and then on that panel. If you have the ability to do it, I know that there's two different options with Brain Tap. A lot of people do get the devices, but they ask me, what does it do? What I would recommend is, it's two very different experiences, both incredibly powerful. But I would tell the Loosid community and the community as a whole to, if you can, try it with the device, because it is a wild experience as far as like meaning good. And there's true science behind it. But do all the sessions, because each session that Dr. Porter and I did really covers a completely different area. So how many sessions did you and I do?
11 in this series, yeah.
How many?
11.
11. Don't do 10. Literally do 11, because when I was doing this and even shooting the episodes, I was gaining a lot of value, even though we had done it and prepared it together. So I would recommend do all 11, really, and really get the benefits of the experience. And listen to Dr. Porter when he says, kind of like that repetition is the mother of skill. You do it and you do it and you do it, and then it becomes a habit, and then you get better. Nothing happens overnight. So it's something that's just been so powerful for me, and people know that I just very rarely will speak, as a huge advocate for something, unless I'm really, behind it from the standpoint of, how I feel inside of my heart. So really give this thing a shot, because we've been dealing with trauma for such a long time. And I will say something else very important. Everybody is suffering from some sort of addiction. I'm a firm believer in that. So I think that every single person can gain tremendous value out of these sessions.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to them. I had my wife listen to them, because I said, these are really, I was like blown away, because those old addiction ones that I have were almost 15 years old. So,
Yeah.
and that's not my world really anymore. I used to see clients every day with that, especially for the Arizona Health Council. We would get the people that didn't really want to be there. They were miserable. They thought the universe was against them. And, so we had to work with them. So I'm going to encourage everyone to jump on that trial. And if you want to go with the headset, there is a lot of science behind there. We'll put a link down there on what is the headset, so people can look at that to get a little bit more information about it, because I have a YouTube video that's just, what's the facts? It's not a sales video, it's all the facts. And so they can go to the YouTube channel at drpatrickporter.com and get that. But we'll share more with Loosid community, because the brain needs energy. If we want to make a change, it's an energy equation. And when you don't have energy, you make bad choices. That's why they say if you eat bad foods, you don't move, these things, you don't make the same choices. So we want to get energy into the brain. So when we put lights in the ears and the eyes and you're listening, it would seem like it would be distracting, but it isn't. The brain will harmonize with it, because every cell has a mirror neuron. So believe it or not, while we're sitting here, your body is in harmony or disharmony with your environment you're in right now. That's why we can go into a place and we say, hey, we dig this place. It's got a good vibe. Or we go into a place and we say, don't have a good vibe. Because our body, all cells are doing this all the time. So we want to bring our brain and body into harmony when we're listening to these, and create energy in the brain, because it takes energy to make these changes. It's not an easy thing. We're not saying, but you want to make it easy because you've already planned a route. So just like I like to use the story of when I was a kid, there was a field we'd used to walk over to the store. And by this time of summer and the grass was really long, that trail was really beaten down. But let's say that I wanted to take another trail. It's going to take a lot of time and energy to build that path down. But if I take it enough times, I'm going to build a new trail. And if I don't take the old one, it's going to grow up. It's going to be hard to get down that. So that's what we're talking about, this one day at a time. And look for, we always tell people, don't look for instant success. Look for progressive growth. Because if you have progressive growth, then you're on the right track. if the brain thinks the sudden change, not everybody gets to have what Saul had on the way to Damascus, where he gets hit by a bolt of lightning and changes his whole religion and everything like that. That doesn't happen to everybody. Most people, they wake up one morning, they figure out, this isn't working for me. Now what? Oh shit! I've invested all this time and energy and money into this persona, and it's not serving me anymore. What do I do? Well, we have a tool for you. Loosid has a lot of tools for you. So we're going to be putting that out there. We're going to share it. I'd love to have your feedback if you're a Loosid user, and you can give us your feedback on what's happening with that. And then we're going to have you back on here in a few months, I think, when we launch the dating app, because that's also a hard thing to do, because it's also, these state-dependent memories. They say that a lot of people talk about it like some addicts could do certain things, or they perceived they could do them better when they were under the addictive state, and when they weren't, they couldn't do them anymore because the brain had learned it under those conditions. So we always say you can't have the pill without the skill. So you can't just do this without reinforcing the skill. So we're going to help you out that way. Go there, try it, give it 13 days. In those days, you could listen to all 11 sessions for sure. You can listen
I was just about to say, it's beautiful because you can listen to all 11 sessions. If you don't like it, it's kind of like my first sponsor said, MJ, I'll tell you what, I make a deal with you. You work the 12 steps. You don't like it, I promise I'll refund your misery. So in the same capacity through the 11 days, and if you don't like it, but I just know you will. And so I'm super excited to do this, Dr. Porter.
Thank you. I would always tell my clients, don't worry. Use these for 21 days. If you don't like them, you can always go back to what doesn't work.
There it is.
So you got to try something different, something new. And you're going to find that thing that works for you, and hopefully will be the spark that helps you to stay one day at a time on the journey of sobriety. So again, MJ, thank you for the podcast. Thank you for the knowledge, the education. We're going to put all the links below. So if you're driving and listening to this, just go back to the website that you got this from. There'll be links there back to the Loosid community and to the app. So you can purchase that download, that free download for 14 days. And then you can, if you want to take advantage of the monthly subscription, you can do it after that. So I just want to thank everybody on the call. Remember, we're on a mission to better 1 billion brains. So if you've listened this far on the podcast, it's your brain we're talking about. And when we help your brain, we know that when your brain gets well and you start operating from your highest level of integrity and truth, then you're going to spark that light in another person. And we're going to get to those 1 billion brains. So thank you very much for being part of the podcast. Please stay tuned, because each time we broadcast one of these podcasts, we bring you someone special like MJ, who's got something to share with the world, something to help you with your brain fitness journey. And I hope by the grace of God that you don't have to go through an addiction journey, but if you are going through it right now, this is a tool that can help you, I promise. Remember, you can always go back to what doesn't work. So give it a try, see what happens. It'll cost you nothing. Give it 13 days. And usually 90% of people will actually start sleeping better in their first 3 days of using just the app alone. So if sleep's your issue, which 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping, it could be that. So again, thanks for tuning in to the Brain Fitness Podcast. Thank you, MJ, for being part of the podcast. And
thanks for having me.
For liking and sharing this and getting it out to the world.
Thank you for joining us on our mission to better 1 billion brains. Follow at Dr. Patrick Porter on social media for updates, and remember to practice brain fitness every day.